Everyone, or good evening, depending on where you're based. I'm Alec from 15 Below, and today we are hosting a webinar on fast travel and self-service. We are going to start with a sort of short presentation to set the scene, but we have some fantastic panelists with us today as well. Just to explain to everyone that we are running slightly late and we have had a bit of disruption this morning. We have two great panelists from Virgin Australia who've been evacuated from their office due to a cyclone. So it's all been quite dramatic. We also have, Shankar should be joining us shortly, and we have Rebecca who's online at the moment, I believe. We also have Ursula Silling, CEO of XXL Solutions, here with us in our office this morning, thankfully. Good morning.
I made it.
Yep. We have Neil Chalk as well, who's our product manager at 15 Below.
Good morning.
And we also have joining us from Thomas Cook, Justin Harley and Sarah Neal. So we have good representation across the business, and hopefully we'll have a lively discussion this morning. We also have many attendees from all over the world. So if you'd like to ask questions of the panelists, of us, of each other, please feel free to type a question in on the GoToMeeting box, and we'll try and field some of those as we go as well. So the idea today, what we want to get out of this for everyone, we want to try and keep it nice and practical. So we are going to try and learn some best practices. So we'll talk to Virgin Australia and Thomas Cook and Ursula about some of the things that are happening at the moment in the industry, and try and get some sort of ideas on what exciting projects are being done, what challenges are being faced, that kind of thing. We're going to cover technology. You know, we're obviously a technology company ourselves. We work in customer notifications and handling customer experience workflows. So those are around a lot of things, including very heavily in disruption and that kind of stuff. But we do a lot of work in fast travel as well. And I think it's true to say everyone on the panelists that we're all coming at this from quite a technological perspective of using technology to empower customer service and that kind of thing. After all of this, we will compile some of the answers and presentations and that kind of thing and send it out to the attendees as well. So you'll all get some follow-up materials and some practical tips and that kind of thing. So first of all, we'll do some introductions of who's going to be on the panel today. So short introduction of myself. I'm Al Tradinic. I'm the Business Development Manager here at 15 Below. I look after the sort of new customers that come to see us and a lot of the partnerships we do and that kind of thing. 15 Below, I'm sure most of you know who we are, but just to give you a bit of background, we are based over in the UK in Brighton. We have an office over in Sydney as well in Australia. We look after about 50 customers globally, most of which become TMCs. So 15 Below, we've been going about 16 years. We look after about 400 million passengers a year, and we very much specialise in automating workflows that are connected through to the reservation systems, DCS, and that kind of thing. I also have with me in the office Ursula Silling, the CEO of XXL Solutions. Ursula, would you like to just give a short introduction of who you are?
Hi, hello everybody. My name is Ursula Silling, and actually I have been working with airlines, mainly airlines, but also technology providers for more than 25 years, including Lufthansa Systems, British Airways, Virgin Group, Russet Airlines. I then started XXL Solutions and founded XXL Solutions in 2010. And one of the main reasons is that I saw that the world is changing so drastically, and quite often, in particular on the commercial side, there were restrictions on how you could deal with the customers, what you could realize because of technology, and simply saw the need to adapt to this digital age. And I've actually prepared a few figures to just show you why this is not even a choice. And this is also where we help actually companies to really manage the change from the strategy to implementation. And if you just see what's happening, whilst we are all here at this seminar, if you look at the GAFAs of this world, so the Google, Amazon, Facebook, Apples, and others, other key technology companies, and you just look at these figures, which are how many search queries are going on whilst we are here, it shows the need to change the way we organize travel and the way we sell travel and the way we operate. And we basically help airlines and other travel parties in particular to turn this into an advantage and an opportunity rather than seeing it as a threat.
Great, thank you. So just a quick introduction from Neil Chalk as well, who's our product manager at 15 Below.
Right, so I've got a background in the kind of dim and distant past in artificial intelligence and commercial research and management consultancy. But for the past 12 years, I've been working at 15 Below, kind of helping airlines automate and improve their business processes with technology. So kind of following on for some of the themes that Ursula was talking about there. We've done a lot of the similar kind of work, mainly in the disruption space at 15 Below.
Excellent. And Shankar, are you online?
Hi.
Hi. Would you like to give us a quick introduction?
Yeah, so my name is Shankar Subramanian. I've been with airlines for close to 10 years, working in the e-commerce, commercial, customer, and right now in the airline operations space, basically structuring and positioning high-level solutions in response to strategy.
Excellent, thank you. And Rebecca?
Yeah, I've been with Virgin Australia for 15 years, and I've worked in all the kind of key areas that have a stake in this kind of experience. So I've had an operations background. I'm currently in IT. I've worked in our product area and also in our loyalty program. So quite a diverse range of experience in these kind of different technologies.
Excellent, thank you very much. And I believe we've got Justin Harley on the line. Justin, are you there?
He's just
No, maybe not. Okay, so as I said, we're having some slight technical issues, but I'm sure Justin and Sarah will catch us up. So just to talk about kind of how we're going to structure this today, we're going to just go through a little bit about setting the scale of the issue. I'm going to talk about the IATA Fast Travel program, just because I think it gives a really good context to what we're talking about here. I appreciate that the industry moves on at a pace, and IATA is you know, a good way of kind of keeping track of these things, even if they're not necessarily pushing those changes. But it's a good way of framing up the discussion. And then we've got some questions for our panelists. We've got some subjects to debate, and we've got some polls that we can go through and ask you, the attendees, as well, to get your votes on. And then we'll wrap up at the end with some final thoughts and takeaways and that kind of thing. So, why are we talking about fast travel? I think it's fairly obvious, and as Ursula's already pointed out, that there's a lot of disruptive technologies out there, and the consumers out there are expecting a far more digitally engaged approach to it, to travel and that kind of thing. Gone are the days where people are going to be willing to stand in queues and you know, have to talk to people and that kind of thing. There will always be a percentage of travellers that will want to go and talk to a human being and get that level of interaction. You know, the older generations, people with certain you know, communication accessibility needs and that kind of thing. But I think we all agree that self-service in other industries is becoming the norm. Things like Uber, Alibaba, you know, all of these things. WeChat is a really interesting space in a lot of the world, where people are organising their entire lives through their social media platforms and communications, and they're not needing very much interaction at all, actually, from the companies they deal with, short of it from in an automated sense. So a lot of this has been driven by technological change and infrastructure enhancements and things like that. People expect to have Wi-Fi all of the time now. Everything's becoming more connected and faster and easier. I think we all know that to be the case, so I'm not going to belabor that point. So A large driver as well for fast travel is going to be the need to cope with scale. We know here that one of the biggest drivers for 15 below to be created 16 years ago was in order to handle capacity. We specialise a lot in disruption and schedule changes and IROPS and that kind of thing. And we've seen the need for automation and technology because when you get into large-scale operations, you can't do things manually. It just isn't practical. You're going to end up with large queues and very dissatisfied customers. We can see that there's predictions around there being 7.2 billion journeys by 2035. I actually think by 2035 we'll have population issues that might be more interesting than just the passenger numbers. But we know that we have to cope with this. Most of the major airports around the world are already at capacity, so we're going to have to work a lot smarter and a lot more efficiently to be able to do this. So the IATA Fast Travel program, which has been running for some time now as part of the Passenger Experience Manager group, we are on the Fast Travel group. I was over in Narita in Japan a few weeks ago discussing it. There's obviously a lot of opportunities in there between automated check-in, baggage, rebooking, self-boarding, handling people when they land at the other end and getting them out of the airport quickly. There are numerous challenges around this from things like legislation, technology adoption, change of procedures, all of that kind of thing. But I think everyone understands that if we can get it right as an industry, it will be cheaper, the customers will be happier, it will be more efficient, and we'll be able to cope with that increase in capacity. So IATA have got a goal to get, I'm sorry about this picture that you guys in Australia, I'm noticed rubbing it in. It probably looks like that out the window at the moment. IATA have got a goal of getting 80% of passengers are able to use fast travel services if they want by 2020. I'm actually quite impressed if you look at the background statistics to this, which we don't have here, but the growth in this is actually moving on quite a pace. People are really focused on it. I think it's a beautiful area to focus on in the airline industry because it's a great example of what's good for the customers, good for the airlines, good for the airport, and that kind of thing. There are obviously our challenges. Having said that, there are only 12 airlines that have reached the platinum status, which if you look at what it takes to become a fast travel platinum status airline, it's good, but it's no more than you would expect these days. It's not although it's called the platinum status, I don't think it's that extraordinary. So it's obviously there is some ways to go, and there are some challenges, and we'll discuss that today. So just to frame up what we're talking about here, so when we talk fast travel, we're talking about a number of things. So IATA described this as an end-to-end journey. I don't personally think that the ends are far off out enough. I think it's the journey begins way back when you're looking for and booking your trip and all of the ancillaries that come with it, and it extends right through to security at the other end and getting out of the airport and your transport links and that kind of thing. But for the purposes of this, we'll talk about the main ones. The idea that IATA are aiming for is to be able to do most of these processes at what they call a walking pace. So rather than the process of being dealt with by people and having to queue up and wait and go through snake queues and that kind of thing, the idea is that you should be able to, at a sort of relatively slow walking pace, be able to just breeze through an airport, drop your bags off, get through gates, get on board, that kind of thing. And you'll see in here, the sort of, we all know these subjects about self-boarding and, bag recovery and that kind of thing. So this is our process, and you can see in here some of the estimated savings in there. I actually think it's probably a lot higher than this. One of the things this only really looks at is the savings. What it doesn't really cover the opportunities. There are lots of opportunities around ancillaries, around negotiations with airports to improve, to share the revenue from dwell time and that kind of thing. But I think we all know that it's a pretty good business case for a lot of these things. Although I do know that the stakeholders involved in these different business cases can vary quite wildly, actually. So getting the budget agreed for some of these initiatives is still a task. It's still quite a difficult thing to do. So I'm going to bring in the panel now and start talking about certain things. Is Justin, are you online now? Hello?
Yeah, we are.
Hey!
Hello, can you hear me?
Hi, Mr. Hardy, how are you?
I'm good, thank you. How's yourselves?
Yeah, not bad. Do you want to just give everyone a quick introduction to who you are? I'm sorry you're not on the slides because you were such a hero and came in at the last minute. We haven't got you on the actual slides. If you could tell everyone a bit about yourself.
No problems. So from Thomas Cook, we've got myself and Sarah Neal, which some of you might know, but for myself, I look after the back-end process, the customer experience. So looking at the production pieces, the ad hoc messages, and anything that we can do when a customer experience needs to be advised of communication, as well as software implementation and moving forward. We've been using 15 Below since over 10 years now. We found them definitely moved in as the industry, as we all know, and we're looking to sort of move to use the different modules as best as possible to help customers through the end-to-end customer cycle. I'll pass you over to Sarah so you can give a brief description of what she does.
Hello everyone. Thank you, Justin. So currently I'm actually heading up digital operations for our e-commerce business, and so that includes looking at all kind of projects for the website and anything digital really. And as Justin said, we have been working 15 Below for the past 10 years. We've actually recently done a migration to a different reservation and inventory solution. So we're basically redoing the projects again and going back through doing disruption, flight status, and looking at this project as a whole, and looking at how we can implement a lot more self-service for our customers going forward.
Excellent, thank you. Hi, Sarah. So let's get into the, I'm going to throw some questions out there at the moment. I'd just be interested really from an airline perspective, just to get us going. Can I just ask Virgin Australia first, and then Thomas Cook, what sort of things you're doing at the moment around fast travel? What sort of projects you can talk about? I appreciate you can't necessarily talk about things that are in development. I know, Shankar, you guys have done quite a bit recently. Is that true?
Yeah, that's correct. So we have pretty much implemented a full ground transformation project that allows passengers to, right from the moment they enter the airport, look after themselves and literally head over to the boarding gate without meeting a member of the Virgin Australia staff if they don't want to. Obviously, along with that, we have little manned kiosks or kiosks with human resources. If people from a non-electronic friendly generation want the human touch, so the kiosks allow you to pick your flight, check in, scan your documents, passport, visa. It does a visa check, prints bag tags, and then you go and drop your bag off at a bag drop chute. So that's gone live in about 4 ports and it's expanding across the network. It does both international and domestic travel at the kiosk. We also have a fully responsive web check-in solution that does the same thing except bag tagging. So people can potentially check in via the web and then visit the kiosk and get a bag tag, and then off they go. We also planning to extend the bag tagging to the web, so you get a home bag tag. So yeah, those are some of the key initiatives that we've implemented.
Right. So you're kind of at the kiosk and hardware stage in the airport, and you're looking to, and you're doing web
kiosk,
check-in.
Hardware, self-service. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, web check-in. We also, I didn't talk about disruption management, but we do automatic disruption management right till the point of right till the point of, I mean, we pick an alternate flight for the guest when there's a disruption, like today in Brisbane and Gold Coast. We are in the process of implementing a solution where we throw it back to the guest and tell them to pick an alternate option. So that should go live soon, hopefully. In terms of baggage recovery, we have a solution that we rolled out to cabin crew that can detect whether bags have got onto the plane, got onto the belly, and if not, cabin crew can have a chat with the guest before they reach the end destination and kick off a recovery process right then and there. So those are our solutions for baggage recovery and disruption.
Yeah.
Shankar, it's Ursula. Can I ask you a question? When you introduced all of these initiatives, what was the main target? Was it to improve the customer experience? Was it actually to achieve operational cost savings? What were the main drivers behind?
There was only one driver, very clearly. So Virgin Australia, for people who know Australia, it competes with Qantas in the domestic market. Qantas is a significantly larger sized airline and has a bigger chunk of the market. We had a management change about 7 years ago, and one of the, I guess our goal or our vision is to become Australia's most loved or Australia's favorite airline group, and to enable us to achieve that vision, very simply, we just wanted to provide a customer experience that was unique. And that's what Virgin Australia is known for in the Australian market, is for that cheerful, customer-friendly experience.
Oh, we have another panelist.
Sorry, we are at home because of the weather, so we've been kicked out. So I'm inside a study.
I don't agree to children are sharp as well. I think it's good. We had it very famously over here in the BBC recently, where someone was discussing politics and home, and their children came in on a live broadcast talking about South Korea or something, wasn't it? It was pretty hectic. But yeah, I think it's a sign you're a multitasker. It's good. So I think it's so you were saying basically your driver for this is that if you look after the customer, the rest of it will be a benefit to everyone. Is what you're saying with that, yeah?
Yeah, that's correct. So basically, yeah, that's where it was coming from. If you look after the customer, we'll then be able to grow our revenue share and become the most favorite airline group. Australia is also a very mobile-friendly country. So our strategy over the last couple of years has been mobile-first deployment. So we'll deploy to the mobile first, and again, because of the demographic and.
Are you doing much with the mobiles? Is it mostly through your own app? Are you doing much through other social media platforms like WeChat, Facebook, and that kind of thing?
We are in the process of integrating or sharing details with Facebook, so people can get themselves recognized using either their Facebook profile or their LinkedIn profile. But that's all in process or in the pipeline. So yeah, but that's all interesting. How can we get a 360-degree view of the customer? 360-degree view of the customer that includes their social interactions and other interactions, other searches.
That's great. Yeah, I mean, we've certainly seen it as a big drive here. We've always, had to keep up with new channels of sending out emails and then SMS and automated voice and app push and that kind of thing. But social media is definitely becoming a channel. I think. Particularly as airline, I think as customers are just using these big aggregated apps now rather than going and getting an individual app for each company they deal with. It's becoming an important channel. Rebecca, have you got anything more to add to that?
Sorry, trying to get off mute. Probably only two things. One of them is that we're pushing for being able to do ancillary purchases through our kiosks as well, so that they can include that in the gamut of all things they can self-service on. And that also in the concepts around using your LinkedIns and your Facebooks, etc., our loyalty program is quite heavily involved in that piece of work as well. So being able to hook up your social media accounts potentially with your loyalty program, and then that benefits the airline by it all coming through the loyalty program as well as not necessarily the airline having to do it directly.
Cool. I think it's definitely a good idea, yeah. Brilliant. That's very exciting. And the guys from Thomas Cook, have you got anything you'd like to add in there? What are you guys up to at the moment with Fast Travel?
But because of our migration that we have, I'm trying to think, it was now 2015, so it was a while ago, but it was quite a big migration for the whole group, and that's for the Thomas Cook airline groups, which includes Thomas Cook UK, Belgium and Condor. So we migrated to a new inventory solution for the whole airline, and that included a new DCS. So at the moment, we're focused on automating our disruption management, and that's kind of key for us at the moment. Second to that, we've just implemented self-service kiosks, and we're implementing payment in them. So that means at the point of people using self-service kiosks, we are able to take additional use of things like extra bags and that kind of thing. What we've got in the pipeline at the moment are we're looking at to do disruption management within the what we call the ops window, which is within day of departure. So stuff like when the flight's delayed or if it's cancelled, to manage those situations a lot better than what we do today. We're also looking at bag tracking and also check-in. The other thing we're looking to build as well is an app. With airlines at the moment, we currently don't have a group airline app. So that is something that is key to our strategy. Our customers, I don't know if anyone really knows, but it's not really your traditional airline pattern in that people are travelling frequently with us. It's generally a holiday customer that might be travelling with us once or twice a year. So in terms of an app, we need to be a little bit more clever or in terms of what content we put in that app and what type of features we put in there, because we've got to encourage people to download the app and make it really useful for them. So that is something we're looking at quite heavily in terms of we put in there, and in relation to, particularly in relation to kind of custom helpful messaging at the right time, and you know, content that's relevant to that customer segment. So for example, if you're traveling with children, then we want to put particular content in there that's really relevant to that customer type versus someone that's got special needs or special requirements. So that's something we're focused on as well. Kind of content the whole customer journey. So that's right from, you know, researching inspiration and then right through to the whole airport experience when they get to their destination in resort and then returning. Quite a big area of development for us.
Brilliant. Yeah, I mean, I do think it's an important thing to get into that, to make sure you've got the disruption piece sorted, because we were, myself and Ursula were discussing this earlier actually, it's like you need to get this working on your worst day, not on your best day. You know, if this doesn't work when things are disrupted and you've got like cancellations and all that kind of stuff, then it's not going to work very well. Have you got anything to add, Ursula? Something you've been working on at the moment with your customers?
Yeah, I think what we actually see a lot, and I might just take the example of Air Malta as a very recent example, is that sometimes we actually first have to take a step back to really think about what are our targets. This is also why I asked earlier on Shankar, because sometimes I think what we see a lot is that airlines completely mess up targets because there is a lot of pressure on results. But then they focus, for example, Air Malta, when we joined and started working with them, they were focusing on catering on board because they wanted to increase ancillaries, and they were having some ops people looking at Wi-Fi on board. But actually, they were their online check-in didn't work, and that this was a process behind, but online check-in, and as we said before, it's just one, I think, one very good example of you expect it as a customer. One journalist said to me, actually at some stage, she said, I tried to book, and this was related to the Air Malta. I had booked Air Malta to come to a summit to Malta from Brussels, and online check-in didn't work. And I thought, is it the right airline? Maybe it's dangerous to fly with this airline. So this is how far it goes if you don't catch up with this, if you don't meet those expectations. So it was all about first understanding where can really a difference be made. Also, Air Malta was actually in a very desperate financial situation. So to understand catering, margins are very, very low, even with onboard sales, and you only annoy customers. Understand what they are doing, which your main groups are, and what you should focus on. So get this holistic customer view instead of everyone doing little bits. Changing the organization accordingly, introducing a customer experience manager, and also introducing even ancillary revenues as part of the whole organization, and the measurements. Then we very boldly introduced the target from quasi zero to achieve an 80% online check-in target to change the mindset in the organization. Ambitious. And for me, it was clear we wouldn't achieve this, but by setting a bold target, you change the mindset, you show it's serious. And similar to Thomas Cook, Air Malta also has a lot of kind of holiday customers. So they are very few frequent travelers. It's a smaller share. So it was also thinking about, and part of those holiday travelers, there were lots of groups. And they had these problems that groups, they knew that there were, for example, lots of groups on a specific Easter Sunday, let's say. And there was chaos at the airport because no one foresaw that this would happen. So it was about enabling self-service facilities for these groups, and at the same time free then the focus to be able actually to surprise and delight them and sell ancillary revenue to them, ancillary services and products, and really think about how can we do this.
Well, excellent, thanks. Yeah, I think there's a number of points there. I think ancillaries will become an increasing, as you getting more digital touch points, you need to capitalize on them in a very nice personal way. Mm-hmm. I also think there is that freeing people up to deal with people who don't want this self-service, you know, and even the ones who do is an education point, but I'll come back to that in a bit. So we've all been talking, but we've got a lot of great attendees on the line, so we are going to ask everyone to get involved now. So we're just going to throw that sort of similar question out to the attendees, and if you could all vote via the user interface you've got there for GoToWebinar, if you could just, if we put the questions up. Oh, right. So, what's the drivers for your fast travel development at the moment? Why are you pursuing these projects yourself at the moment? This is out to the attendees. If you could all vote on there and say what the big issues are. That's brilliant. Everyone's getting involved. Like that. It's always good. You can tell people are paying attention. Okay. So can you publish those now? Okay. So this is really interesting. Actually, we can see that for the results of that, the majority there, 50% say this is because of customer demand, which I think is really interesting. 27% are saying cost, which I think goes hand in hand with customer demand, because obviously it's efficient, but also if your customers are demanding it and you're not providing it, it's going to cost you as well. And then 15% are saying registration, revenue opportunities, 4% legislation, and 4% something else. So I think that kind of goes with what I would expect. Would you, Ursula, is that in line with the projects you've been doing, would you say?
Yeah, absolutely. I think the customer is now determining the game if you want to be competitive. Absolutely. And you need to try and ensure that you get the cost aligned, and at the same time maybe don't just think about cost cutting, because the staff will even work against it, but use the time that you free up and the staff that you free up in order to sell more, in order to give a better service and surprise and delight your customers. And then you actually achieve even more than this.
Yeah, I know that.
And in addition, I think, in addition, I think if you have a smooth customer experience, it's also easier to pitch ancillaries, and there's a much better take-up of ancillaries if it's in the middle of a good experience. If it's
Absolutely.
a good experience.
I think you have that trust there, don't you? If you're handling the customer well, and we find that from a communications point of view, there's lots of ancillary opportunities in the messages we send, but you have to have dealt with the important stuff first. If you don't tell someone their plane's late, don't try and tell them something because they're not going to trust you. It's those, you've got to build all those things in there. Justin and Sarah, have you got anything to comment on there? Do you find is it the customer demand that's driving you there, do you think?
With all the different ways that customers can contact through social media or through chat or the different solutions, if you don't do simple things correctly, and the trust is previously said, is that you lose that, the opportunity to upsell. So you need to get the simple things correctly, because if you don't, it will going to cost you more in the long run. That you, through different ways, lose brand trust for that. So yeah, it's definitely get the simple things right, and then you can move forward with the auxiliary sales, and customer demand is pushing that more than ever because of the ways and the different ways that they can communicate, as well as give your brand a positive or negative delivery.
Absolutely. Neil?
Yeah, I was just going to say, from a 15 Below point of view and the projects that we kind of typically work on, I think this customer demand has had another positive effect, because we first did kind of the automated check-in piece about 10 years ago. And we're seeing a lot more of a shift now to look at that customer perspective and to break down the silos. So it's not just, oh, we're doing check-in over here and we're doing bags over there. It is actually a whole customer journey. And I think this is where the disruption really comes in as well, because you need those silos to be broken down so that people can get all of the services they need at the right time, rather than having to go over here and over there. So that's where I think we're really seeing that customer demand is helping the airlines as well improve their efficiency.
And I think it forces them, if as an airline you really put yourself into the shoes of the customers, to work together with it, it forces you to change your processes, and you need to ensure that your staff follow it. And I've got this example when I flew over to London with British Airways. There was, like, shortly before the flight was meant to leave, there was an announcement at the airport that there was going to be a delay. No further information. So we were almost starting to guess this. But then I checked the app, and the app actually told me expected flight time, and it was actually 2.5 hours later. And the airport staff wouldn't tell this. They weren't aware of this. So I think it's a very good example. It's important as an airline to align those processes to get this right. And that's absolutely crucial to work together.
We've definitely found that with doing flight status notifications. So these are notifications that are triggered by the operations feed, and then the right message is sent out to the right people. But you have to include the staff members in that, because it's a brilliant thing to be able to give passengers real-time information, but it's an absolutely awful thing if they walk up to a member of staff and say, so about this 2-hour delay, and the member of staff says, what delay is that? Yeah. So you have to get that joint up thinking, because there's lots of opportunities in there as well. You can time it differently. You can tell your staff members first. The message you send to them can be about the empathy they need to give to the passengers, what numbers and links they can use to sort it out, what's going to happen next, so they all feel prepared for it. But it's an interesting thing of, you can't operate in those silos, because you're just actually creating problems, because it's, I think that's definitely a really good point. So one of the questions I have for the panel is, what difficulties are you finding, what efforts are you making when it comes to self-service around passengers understanding how these new processes work? It's something that we all see when you go and do self-service. For those of us, I expect everybody on the call is a relatively frequent traveller. And we all think it's great for self-service because we know what we're doing. We get there and we've got the bag tag and we scan it and stick it on the thing and jump on the plane and it's fine. But I'm invariably stuck behind a lot of people who just don't know what's going on. They're completely confused by the new processes and that kind of thing. Just a question out to you, Shankar and Rebecca. Have you found you've had to work on educating the customers on how these new processes work? Have you found adoption's been pretty smooth?
Like Shank's mentioned before, Australia is pretty progressive when it comes to mobile and self-service. Like our grocery stores quite frequently have self-service in those these days as well. So I think from my perspective, and I was certainly working in the operational space when we launched our initial set of kiosks that we have much more advanced kiosks these days, and our online tools, that they were actually taken up quite easily, and the education piece wasn't too massive. I know we did a lot of opportunities, certainly in the online space, for people to choose the option to have kind of the tips, like screen tips and screen tools and things like that show up if they didn't know what was going on, but that was an optional choice. And similarly, we had staff very much prepared when we introduced kiosks to prepare for that initial introduction to deal with the customers. But yeah, generally Australia is pretty progressive when it comes to that. So I think our education piece was quite easy.
Great stuff.
And with our online check-in, about maybe 2 years ago, we changed it from a traditional web app or traditional 2000s web app to a more I guess more 2015 kind of a web app where it's conversational and everything. The main reaction was from people who are more just upset with the change as opposed to not finding it easy to use. And then the take-up has been pretty good. It's actually improved. It's also improved ancillary sales. So yeah, I agree. It's more, Australia is a bit more progressive that way.
Right, I've got to say, I see there's hordes of confused people at Gatwick here whenever I jump through. It's not a straightforward thing. But I think what's nice, as you said, Ursula, is you've now got people out walking the floor in front of the kiosks going, "Are you all right? Can I help?" Rather than just stuck churning through a queue. It's a totally different experience. Is it something you're finding with Ursula? Is it finding with the projects you're working on?
Yeah,
the education piece?
Yeah, absolutely. I think it's crucial. I always tend to say, go back to your customer, understand your customer. So if you know that you've got a certain amount of customers who might actually be not that digitally friendly, you wouldn't want to alienate them, and at the same time you might have or might even want to build a new group of customers, starting with students and completely different types of groups business, for example, where you simply need to excel with the digital part and you need to communicate to both of them differently. So we did, for example, with some senior citizens groups, we simply communicated to them, we just ease this, but here you go if you want to print out your boarding pass, because they would feel awkward to come just with a mobile without anything in their hand, and a lot of people still do, even some younger people. And then in order to address students, even as new customers, and to show how cool this was, we introduced, for example, with a customer, a special product where we actually did real events at universities, where we said, actually, if you buy this and you also use online check-in and so on, and you buy also a return flight, you get an additional piece of luggage for free. So instead of also there fighting even other providers which take away the luggage fees, and attracting this special group of people who have more.
So that's really end-to-end. So you were putting in the offer went into a specific demographic, all the way through the booking chain and all the way back again.
Yeah. And the third thing we always tend to do, it's again ensuring that the staff has the same experience, because quite often we found that with staff travel, they still work completely different and can't do it fully automated. If they don't understand it, what we saw happening is that, for example, at check-in, you had done everything mobile, you just wanted to drop off your bag, and they would still print the boarding pass. partly because of systems issues, but simply no one had thought about this. And then you feel as a customer, I made all this effort, I'm happy, now I have to get a piece of paper again. And this is completely counterproductive. So it's very important to take this into account and also have this internal campaign.
Absolutely. Yeah, I mean, Neil, I know we found over the years that about personalising the messages that go out to preempt and prompt all these things have to be specific to those sort of the audience you're sending it out to, right?
Yeah, and I think you can kind of do a lot to ease that journey in the airport if you give people a bit of warning up front. I remember travelling out of Heathrow a few years ago, and I'd got an electronic boarding pass, but Heathrow wasn't actually using those for that airline and that check-in desk yet. So it was a bit of a shock turning up there and finding out, like I said, I've got to exchange one bit of paper that I took the time to print out for another one. So yeah, if I'd known that up front, and I think having that personalisation piece there to really tailor the guidance and help you give, and with the technology we have now, you should be able to do that, I think, for most communications.
I've always said this, that, you know, when we're sending out communications, we often talk here about, you know, sending different messages out to, say, families with children who might not travel as frequently compared to business travellers. Although I'm often so jet lagged going to an airport, I probably need the more handhold version, you know, telling me where everything is so I don't get lost because I'm totally confused. So I think we'll go on to another question for the attendees. So this is just a quick survey to see who out there at the moment is doing what. So just to see out of all the brilliant airlines we've got on the attendee list, just kind of which services do you offer to your passengers at the moment. So just while those are coming in, I just thought I'd explain, it occurred to me we talked about auto checking a bit, but I don't know whether everyone necessarily understands that because it's not that widely adopted at the moment. We're doing auto checking for a few airlines now where the customer can opt in to be checked in. So what happens is we go through, we filter all the bookings they're about to fly, we see if they're eligible to be checked in. If they are, we actually perform the check-in on DCS, send out the right boarding pass for the right airport, as Neil said, so that you don't send someone a mobile boarding pass if that airport won't cope with it. And then if they're missing any details and can't be checked in, we just go out to the customer, communicate with them, get them to fill in the details and update the booking and check them in. So we've got the results in now. So it looks like automated check-in is on about 59%. We've got nobody on the call who's doing bags ready to go at the moment with home printable bag tags. We are seeing a few airlines do that at the moment. I'm kind of not sure whether until the e-bag tags come out, whether printing things out at home is necessarily new technology, which is probably what's affecting the adoption rate. 9% are doing flight rebooking and 32% are doing self-boarding. So it's interesting there. There's still a lot to be achieved. Does that sit well with your experience, Ursula? Are you finding that with your clients? Do you think it's sort of all to play for at the moment, that it's not bedded in?
I think there is a big reluctance for the various reasons I mentioned earlier, because there's so much commercial pressure that the focus is on how do we get that right. At the same time, the quick wins, sometimes it's forgotten to really look at what are the quick wins that I can do fast. And in a way, maybe sometimes it's easy to say this technology doesn't work and it might be a reason not to do things, but there are always ways how to do them. And this is, I think, where there's still too much concentration and deviation from the real business as a result. But this is often not seen because they don't prioritize properly.
Yeah. I think we all understand the opportunities. I think we could probably run a whole another hour on how to do the business case and get the right stakeholders involved.
Hello, Al?
Yes.
Hello. Hi, it's Sarah from Thomas Cook. Sorry, I just have some points to make on this question, because currently for Thomas Cook we have a lot of different customer types, or say channels, in which we're distributing our seats. So we don't actually own all our customers that fly on our flights, which makes contacting them and managing that customer experience quite hard. So for example, we're distributing via the GDS or in particular via different tour operators, and often those contact or direct contact information is not passed to us. So when it comes to actually managing the customer experience fully, either around disruption or other post-booking communications, it makes it quite hard for us. This is something we are, a challenge we are looking to try and overcome, because of course to reach this kind of compliance, we're going to need to get hold of that information somehow so that we can start educating those customers, because that's another thing, in that the different customer types. So if someone's more used to travelling on a package holiday and booking via a tour operator or directly offline with a travel agency, they're kind of, how used to using this digital technology, and their expectations are quite different to someone that books directly on our web.
And they're the ones that
have to manage. Yeah, they need a lot more hand-holding throughout the whole process. So actually education as a whole is a big thing for us to look at, okay, how do we educate these customers into self-service so that we can reach this type of compliance and we can kind of improve the customer experience, increase operational efficiencies, drive down costs, and just, deliver something.
If it's any consolation, I was banging that point in every session I was in at IATA the other day in Japan. I was going on and on about it, because I think IATA still think that after 830D of resolution of both sharing contact details, that's been dealt with. And I was trying to explain to them that everything in that end-to-end process is going to rely on talking to the customer. And if you don't have an email address or a phone number for that customer, you aren't going to be able to talk to them. So you're not going to be able to educate them. You're not going to be able to send them the boarding pass. All of those things. We're working on. We've always worked on many ways here of trying to cross-reference contact details out of frequent flyer programs and that kind of thing. But I think at the end of the day, the industry has to accept that the customer owns the customer, and they own their contact details, and those details should be given to whoever is appropriate to service them at that point. But that is definitely, we can talk about that.
Yeah, or you have to have something that is unique, which is very difficult in the industry we're in. So the only way you can do that is to have an app or have something that is widely known as being the best delivery, because I think we all, as in the airline, we're all going to know that it doesn't matter what IATA or what someone says they have to provide, that's not going to be something short term. So the only way that we can get that customer contact details or email is by giving them something to come onto the website itself. So we need to sort of develop that, whether that be through social channels, or that be through campaigns, but we need something which targets those customers that we don't have their email for, and give them an incentive or something to come directly on our website to deliver that.
Yeah, so it's about that overall customer engagement. I'm just conscious of the time we're running out. Are there any final thoughts from you, Shankar or Rebecca?
No, not anything more than what we've said. The only other thing we found is that a lot of airports, when we're particularly talking about airports, a lot of airports in Australia want to take control of their technology platforms, and so we're seeing a lot of desire for our solutions to work in a CUS framework, and sometimes so you got to be sure that your vendors can get the solution certified and for the solutions to be deployed in a common user kind of an environment with multiple other solutions running. And the other peculiar thing is the two major REST system vendors. One of them is in the CUS or is entering the CUS market, Amadeus, and so you got to sometimes get both of them to play together with passenger data, which is a challenge in itself. So, yeah.
Always will be. Yeah, I have to say, actually, I do think there is a lot of frustration. I don't think anyone's found the right way of getting the airports, common use vendors, and airlines all, pulling in the same direction by any means. And it will remain to be seen. But big vendors like Amadeus wading into that space probably won't speed things up. Rebecca, have you got anything to add as a sort of final thought?
No, probably just to add, where we want to go strategically is to start moving into that kind of omni-channel journey where you can start on one of these platforms and finish your journey on another platform. So that's very much the direction we would like to head in, understanding that's a lot of work, but we're obviously in a very unique market too, based on the uptake of technology and also the size of our airports compared to some of the size of the airports you guys are dealing with.
Yeah. Yeah, I think being being channel agnostic is definitely important. I don't think anybody can necessarily predict where those channels are going. You just have to be ready to adopt and assimilate that data. Ursula, final thoughts?
Yeah. Maybe just 2 or 3 thoughts. One is automation in itself shouldn't be the target. Don't forget the real target. And this means understand your customers and where to really start, where you can make a difference. And by doing it in a way that it's really simple and easy to use and consistent with your processes throughout. Don't forget the staff, just as a reminder, because otherwise it will not work and you will not achieve it. And maybe in the whole chain, we talked a lot about the operational elements here, but automation, if your target is to gain a lot of new customers or to retain customers for whom automation is important, ensure that you think about the process and the planning and booking process, where with automation you can achieve a lot to keep the customers rather than in that process and convert more and gain more revenue. And ultimately also throughout then the process up to the departure and then even at the airport by communicating to really then gain additional revenues and improve the customer experience at the same time, including destination services. Technology allows for this now. It's huge opportunities. And everyone is looking for opportunities to increase revenue at the same time.
Absolutely, yeah. Neil, any thoughts?
Yeah, I think Shankar briefly touched on common use there. I think looking at the consumer market, one common use piece of technology that might not be immediately considered are people's phones and apps. If you look at the Amazon Echo or Google Chromecast, they don't have any visual user interface themselves. They rely on an app which you can interact with it. I think with near-field communication kind of technology as well, maybe the bag drop, you'll already have the airline app. You'll just wave your phone in front of the kiosk. It will then print things out, and then that might help speed up the queues.
Plug in or something.
Yeah.
I think that's a very good point. I think we can all see that the technology is going to keep moving, that the customer demand is going to keep improving. The technology is moving on so fast now. I'd argue that most people's phones that they're putting under the scanner at a kiosk is more advanced than the kiosk itself generally, which is quite interesting when you think of common use in airports and that kind of thing. There's a lot of technology in there. So trimming the next steps on all of this, thank you everyone for joining us today. It's been really interesting. I wish we had more time. We could probably talk about this for days, I'm sure. We'll see what the feedback's like. We might run another one of these. We run these webinars about once a quarter on various subjects, so if you're interested, we'll keep you posted. We'll send out the materials from, some of the materials from this. If anyone's got any questions they want to ask us about customer communications and automation and that kind of thing, questions they'd like to ask Ursula about the things that she can help with in consultancy. We're not going to obviously share everyone's contact details out, but if you would like to ask questions of any of the panelists, just forward them through us and we'll hand them over. I'd just like to thank all of the panelists for your participation. Thank you very much. It's been great, particularly under extreme conditions in some cases. I just finished with a quote that I think was on the last page, which talks to the fact about a customer owning their customers. There's a guy called Ira Gershkoff who's an IROP specialist. And he once said that the customer choose the product based on its price, but they judge the value based on the service they receive, and that I think is going to become increasingly important. You can see all our contact details up on the screen there, but I'd just like to finish by saying thank you very much to everyone for participating, and hopefully we'll see you on the next webinar.